Hey, Stacie Bloomfield here. Over the past year on my podcast Art Plus Audience, I had real conversations with artists building sustainable creative businesses. I thought it would be fun to share pieces of advice from some of those conversations. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Art Plus Audience podcast.
The way that I look at it is you don't need to worry about it too much because the way that the world is working now is the algorithms are spreading voices that are very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Part of practicing and learning things means your voice is a little bit muddy just by nature of like you're
Yeah.
practicing a bunch of different things and you're maybe learning how to photograph and you're learning what your aesthetic is and what you want to say. So you're like experimenting. And the nice thing about the way that the online world works now is the clearer your voice gets, the more the algorithm does a lot of the work for you and the more it'll attract an audience to you. So I feel like it's a little bit of a like just kind of jump in and go with it. And while your audience is probably small, like learning to pay attention to you in a certain way, while that's still evolving, just keep practicing. And
Yeah.
then as you get clearer, the algorithm will work with you and for you. And people will be like, oh yeah, I get that girl. I get what they're doing. I get what their vision is. I can like follow along with this path. And you'll kind of attract an audience organically as you become clearer and clearer. If you want to be known for your art in particular, so it's gonna be like from the lens of like creative business, art business in particular, your most important number one thing is going to be your art. And if that means you only share your paintings, you are going to do great. Accounts that are very, very narrow and focused do better than those that are broader, which is why I say definitely no more than 6. Like when you pick out your like main number one thing, the next thing to do is to think about what's the thing that supports my number one goal here. So if you share, let's say, the two most tertiary things to the actual art, it would be like your actual art, your art process, and then maybe like something that's adjacent to it. Like it could be beautiful interiors, it could be like really stylish, like whatever your subject matter is about, you could include that kind of content. Like if you paint portraits, you could include fashion, you could include makeup, like those kinds of things could belong next to your thing. When you look at your life, just, kind of think like, what do you want to share?
My courage came with age. I mean, I'm not saying that if you're in your 20s, you can't have that same courage. But when I started getting a little older and I'd kind of been around the block a few times work wise, I was like, look, life is short. You only have so much time. Why not just try this? If it fails, I care a lot less now that I'm over 50 than I did when I was in my 20s, what people think of me. I just don't care if I look silly or goofy or weird or I put some art out there that people don't like. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. That's cool. I'll move on to the next thing because, people's attention spans are short. People's memories are short. Okay, so there's a failure. Big deal. No one's going to remember. And dwelling on it isn't going to help me or anyone else. I'm just going to do something else. Your feelings are not necessarily reality. Now, I'm not saying to not pay attention to your feelings, but taking things with a grain of salt is very important. And comparing yourself to anyone but yourself and tracking your progress is just a recipe for disaster because we're never going to live up to, any standard that we see someone else setting. And also, you said something, Stacie, that I quote all the time. It is, you should trademark this. You said, at some point along my journey, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle.
Yep.
And, that is so true. When you said that, I dropped everything. And you would think like after years of experience and not being, I was already an adult. I already had life experience and work experience. You think I would know that, but I didn't. So being brave and trying new things and putting yourself out there is not something that comes naturally to anybody, but you have to push yourself into it and be willing to be like, look, if it doesn't go well, I'm going to be okay. It's not going to be the end of the world and I can move on and do something else.
you can't make art you love if you hate yourself, because art is self-expression. You're never going to love that expression if you hate the thing it's an expression of, which is you.
Yeah.
And so that sounds nice, but I think it's actually true. And so when I was starting out in my creative journey, I was in a place where I'd watch my mom really struggle, and she'd left my family and started another family, left that family, never held down a job, just a lot of struggles, ended up with all kinds of other things going on. And I felt like, oh, I'm like this and I want to be the opposite of that. And so I spent my first, into my teens and first half of my 20s really trying to run away from who I was. At the same time, I was trying to create an art practice, which is really ridiculous, but I couldn't see that contradiction. I couldn't see like, oh, you can't run away from yourself and self-express at the same time. That's why making art that you love, that feels authentic, starts with loving yourself. That's a worldview. And it also rubs up against lots of prominent worldviews. I don't like to polarize for no reason. So there's plenty of stuff I don't talk about. I'm not afraid to talk about anything, but there's a lot of things I choose to not talk about for kind of purposeful reasons. That saying that, I'm aware of, the more people think about it, they're going to realize, oh, that's actually a controversial thing to start with. You're a good thing that should be cultivated.
Yeah.
I'll go to my deathbed on that one. So I'm happy to polarize. And I think if you're an artist, I think it's really essential to develop some positive relationship with yourself, even if you won't go as far as I will.
I think there's like a toxic positivity issue on the internet, and there's like the starving artists theory feeding it. So it's like there's new artists, and I'm not saying don't charge what you think. I'm just saying, like, if you want to run an art business, maybe reconsider. If you just want to make art, go make art. Who cares what you're pricing it for? Because if you can make a piece and you can sell it for $10,000, and if only one sells it, fantastic. But if you want a sustainable business model, which is what I guess you and I are talking about here, that is a different situation. So I think the messaging gets mixed because, first of all, there is so much noise. And second of all, I think there's, a toxic positivity issue. Like, know your worth, do this, but I'm not sure if that is the right advice. I would say build your brand. That's the first module in Secret Artist Business. Build your brand, get paid a little bit to do that. Do it on the side. Keep a part-time job. I'm not saying don't make money. Make money. You need money to live. It's expensive to live. But, like, figure it out so it's not so stressful.
I think at the start, I reckon it's just create what you want to create. So I did that in a roundabout way. I started drawing pubs, but I couldn't see how they were going to make me money. So I went off and did other things for other people. And then I did a full circle and came back to that. But just stay true to yourself, and you're not going to enjoy it if you're drawing something you don't want to draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love what I do. Like, it's so cool. And I wouldn't find it exciting to draw a puzzle of Austin, Texas. I only want to draw the places that mean things to me and my audience.
And that matters. And it shows through. So create the things that you like to create and love what you're creating. And if you ever get to where you don't love what you're doing, maybe stop and ask yourself, well, at what point did I stop loving it? And maybe you can then kind of get back into the fold a little bit, back where you'd like to be, and keep going and grow. So,
and you don't have to stick with something. You can try it for a while and change.
And that's ultimately how I went about my copywriting. Was I only copyrighted the designs that I could see were taking off, or maybe if you've seen already one of them being counterfeited, that's a good wake-up call. Like, you need to get the copyright locked down, because there's a huge difference between somebody stealing your work before or after you have the copyright. That if someone steals your work before you have a copyright, and then you go, and you're always in a position to be able to get a copyright if you're the original creator, and you get to backdate it. You can say, I made this item 10 years ago, but I'm copywriting it today. And you would get a copyright that's basically writes that out. And so if you got the copyright after somebody counterfeits your work or stealing it, you're only entitled to collect the profits of what that person made on your work. However, if someone steals your work after you've already copyrighted it and you've received your registration, that gets into the territory of willful infringement, where they had the ability to know that this item was copyrighted and they overlooked it and they went ahead and stole it anyway. And so you might be able to get damages on that. So even if they only sold 10 units, and that's not important. What's important is how much did that affect your brand?
Yeah.
Did people, did that really damage you? And you'd have to kind of show your evidence of why it really hurt. Like, one of the biggest ways that you can get a larger settlement is if there's some sort of confusion to the customer, that if somebody who was shopping on a fast fashion website and bought a t-shirt that had your trademark on it, for example, then that's much more valuable in terms of what you can recoup than, say, if it was just a design that was being sold.
I see. So we're talking damages and benefits of registering your work earlier rather than later. But like Daniel said, you can always register it for copyright. The difference typically is price, and then, of course, like you said, what you're able to get if you're ripped off. And the price does increase if you are doing it after it's published, right? I'm not a lawyer either, but I know there's a difference between unpublished work and published work. And that's also confusing, especially in a day and age of social media right now. Like, is it published if I just put it on Instagram? Is it published if I'm asking for money? Do you have any tips maybe for artists who are starting to think a little bit more strategically about how to protect themselves with sharing their work online?
Yeah, once you post your product, so once you put it up anywhere, or even if you just have it on your computer, but there's a timestamp on when you created it, that is published. That is the date that you are going to be able to say this was created and this is when I became the owner. And so that might come into play if somebody does end up stealing your work and claiming that they're the original creators, and then you can get them. So yeah, I mean, we live in this world where everything is memes and recycled and goes a million places. For me, at least, as a creator, as soon as I started sending my art files overseas to get produced, I used to print shower curtains as well. I got into home decor for a little bit. As soon as you send the art file across the pond, you are done. Like, that image is going to be everywhere, almost guaranteed. And so it's really important to copyright your work. You shouldn't feel, however, that you can't post. I would really hope that you aren't in the mental state that you feel like, you know what, I'm just not going to put my work up anymore because it's going to get stolen or something of that nature. One of the most rewarding messages we got back from an artist that we helped was, not only did you guys financially help us, but I'm feeling like I can put my art back up online.
And I'm a huge believer that these conversations that we have that are not necessarily like outcome oriented, but just saying out loud what you want. You never know who's going to hear it and what it could lead to next. It's like, what is the best that could happen? Which I love that mantra that you have. You're a young mom and you're building this life, but it seems like when you say that you want something, it kind of is happening. So have you seen that happen in your life prior to kind of pursuing this side hustle as a creative in other areas? I'm just curious.
Yeah, a little bit. Faith is something that is important to me. And so it kind of intermixes maybe with my prayer life a little bit. But I do think, there's power in your speech, and it says that in the Bible. And, when I really want something, speak it out loud, but be a bit thoughtful about the things that I say, because sometimes you don't know what you're putting out there, all the repercussions that could come back. It might look like the ideal, perfect situation. And then when you get into contracts or details or personalities, things don't always work out. So when I'm praying about the things that I'm saying out loud and striving towards, I always say, Lord, what's not for me, let it pass me over. And what is for me, just open the door wide open. And so that's been, moving to Houston was a huge, scary thing. I was so in love with my husband, but I didn't know anyone else in the city, and we weren't engaged yet and all this stuff. And so I was saying out loud, I want to be with him, and I think this is the one, and all this stuff, but I wasn't sure. And so I think for me personally, being prayerful has helped with some discretion and knowing if it's in alignment with all the other things in my life.
What we say, our brain believes. And for anyone who's listening, if you're not spiritual or religious, let me just tell you, like, this is gold and it's scientifically backed. Like, there's research about what you say out loud and the thoughts that you think, what it actually does to like your nervous system. And so whether you are prayer oriented or journaling meditation oriented, or maybe you just are a positive person and you're just speaking life all over the place and you don't even realize it, like what you say about yourself and about what's possible for yourself can be a gate that swings wide open, or it can be something that closes shut. And we sometimes, this is just me going off of my own soapbox, so often I see people talking about the external factors that are keeping us from what we want. Do you know what I mean? And we're not all powerful beings. That's not what I'm saying, but there are so few things that we actually do have control over in our lives, and how we speak and getting control over how we think about ourselves and what's possible. Like that is maybe the most important thing anyone can do, whether it's a creative side hustle, whether it's in your full-time job, whether it's with relationships. And I've just seen that time and time again, this through line for people who I see like making the things happen. They're very intentional. For more conversations like these, listen to the Art Plus Audience podcast on your favorite platform, or watch full episodes here on my YouTube channel. If you want to hear more tips for growing your creative business, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye. Hey, Stacie Bloomfield here. My book, The Artist Side Hustle, is officially out now. I wrote the book I wish I had when I started Gingerbread. Inside, you'll learn 13 ways to monetize your art, the essentials of a strong portfolio, and how to use just 5 hours a week to grow your creative business. You can grab it anywhere books are sold, including the audiobook read by me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, could you do me a favor? Could you subscribe to this podcast and then share it with one of your best art friends? I'd really appreciate it. And then head on over to Instagram and follow me at the Leverage Your Art account, and you can keep up with all of our future episodes. Thank you so much for your support. It means everything to have you here listening and learning. Bye.